What is up, guys? I hope you're all having an amazing day and welcome to the video. I'm going to be covering every top lane champion, naming the benefits and the downsides from them to help you find your champion. And then I'm going to be ranking all top laners in tier lists. I'm going to make a lower MMR tier list all the way from bronze up until diamond, so emerald is still included. And then I'll make a tier list overview from diamond up until challenger to showcase the differences. Most importantly, help you guys find your main champion, see what champions still kind of transfer that if you learn them in lower elo, they're still good in higher elo, all that good stuff. So I'm gonna go down into the nitty-gritty, explain some of my thoughts that I have on every top laner, and help you guys find your main. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys there. Alrighty, guys, so we're gonna start off with the lower MMR tier list. I don't mean this in the condescending way, but we're going up until diamond. So iron, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and emerald elo, right? Generally speaking, people that play around this MMR are either new or a bit less experienced. And if you are, that's not, like, if you are more experienced, that doesn't really matter either. The champions that tend to do well in this MMR are going to be completely different to what we're gonna see in the higher elos, right? Champions like Mordekaiser, for example, do super well in the lower MMRs, but they're not gonna do too well in the higher elos because people will know how to expose them and play against it, when it's just a very good champion in the lower MMR. So there's a few things, and they all start with an S, so I'd say the 4S that I think are very good for low MMRs. First of all, we have stat check. What I mean with stat check is that your kit is basically very annoying to play into, to trade into, like a set, like a Mordekaiser, right? It's very hard to approach this champion because it just feels like a brick wall that you have to lane against. So that's stat check. Another form of stat check, for example, is Darius passive, where his passive alone gives him 3 longswords, 30 AD worth of gold. So it's just very hard to match those stats. Then we have scaling, right? Very often in the lower MMRs, the games are going to be lasting longer, so scaling is amazing. Sustain is very good because if you take a bad trade, you at least have some fallback patterns through sustain. And then we have split pushing because I think very often, able to split push well, you're going to be in a good position regardless. So I think those 4 things are very important to keep in mind when we're talking about the lower MMRs. So we're going to start out with Aatrox. And I believe he is between A and B tier for me. Now, Aatrox actually requires quite a lot of games to start getting consistent on. He has a very good sustain. He is okay scaling, but he's pretty bad at split pushing in general. It's hard to, you know, really catch people off guard in the side lane. And in terms of stat checking, he is alright. Now, I myself struggled quite a lot with learning how to play Aatrox. I think his kit is absolutely amazing. One of the best designed kits in the game. And he is very often a safe pick. He can actually play into both ranged and melee champions and tanks. So he's kind of a very well-rounded laner. The main issue that I find with Aatrox is that you're very often going to be teamfight oriented. It's hard to progress in side lane, it's hard to catch people off, so you have to play teamfights, which kind of gives a drawback for me to play Aatrox in a solo queue environment where I believe split pushing to be superior, right? So, Aatrox, very good laning, good sustain, kind of a safe blind pick. In terms of scaling, he's alright, he scales pretty good with items. I believe that Niall said that Lethality Aatrox is weaker, so Bruiser Aatrox is a little bit better now, but I'm not confirming that. For me, Aatrox is either B tier or A tier. I'm gonna put him in A tier for now, but maybe later I change my thoughts. Because when I look at the next champion, which is Akali, for me it's either B or wouldn't recommend. And that is because I believe Akali is better at mid lane, first of all. And I would only play Akali top more so as a counter pick to certain melee champions like a Jax, for example. And the reason as to why is because a lot of things that Akali lacks is wave clear, one of that, right? She has decent wave clear, but not so much as like a lot of other top laners have wave clear. And she can't really farm side waves and, well, she can farm side waves, let's say jungle camps, like high resource. It's pretty hard to get consistently high resources on Akali, whereas I believe if you play champions that give you very easy access to high resources, high CS per minute, stuff like this, you're gonna be much better. I also believe that play Akali from behind is very tricky, and in a lot of matchups, you're losing the early game because Akali is a very weak early laning phase champion unless you really know what you're doing. I don't think you play Akali casually. I think you either main her or you don't play her unless you know how to counterpick her in certain melee champions like Jax, what I said, for example. Yeah, so what are the benefits to Akali? Well, she's amazing 1v1 potential. She's very good in, let's say, 2v2 skirmishes, early game skirmishes. This is where she shines, but in terms of split pushing, in terms of gathering a lot of resources, she's not that good. So I would, for the lower MMRs, put her in B or wouldn't recommend, but I even don't see her that much in high elo, only as a counter pick, right? So that's where I would put Akali. Now, Akshan, range top laner. Honestly, I'm gonna put him in wouldn't recommend. I'm very curious to see what stats he's actually rocking in the lower MMRs, so I'm gonna take the average. He might not even be considered in the tier list. No, I don't think he is. So I'm gonna put Akshan in wouldn't recommend, and this is because I believe that Akshan is one of the hardest range top champions to play. I would never advise you to play Akshan casually. And the biggest reason why I believe the champion is so hard to play is that once you start falling behind, playing Akshan from behind, you're just gonna get steamrolled. You need to really know how to position well. You need to understand that when you're approaching team fights, you're very often, you know, trying to be later in joining, or you have to watch around. There's a lot of conditions you have to look out for, right? So you have to be very smart when approaching team fights, and even when laning with this champion. Now, you are very oppressive in laning. You're one of the strongest early laning champions, but again, you have no fallback patterns. It's very easy to gank you, and I simply wouldn't recommend playing him in the lower MMRs because of the things we said earlier. I just don't think he's gonna function well enough. I would not recommend you to play Akshan on lower MMRs. Briar, a lot of people have asked me to go for Briar or try out Briar. I don't think she is considered in most top lane tier lists. I will also say that my knowledge regarding Briar is very limited. I have played one game of Briar in my life, and that's it. So I couldn't really tell you the drawbacks or the benefits. I think she's a good stat checking champion, right? And she's pretty good scaling. She's a lot of sustain. Although she doesn't have any health regen, so that's a drawback of laning with her. I know too little about this champion to really formulate a good opinion. Therefore, I will say I'm gonna put her B tier, or wouldn't recommend. But I know there's a lot of Briar fanatics out there, so I'm gonna be careful there. This is the first one, and I'm gonna have to put it either between S or S+. Now, when you go in a little bit higher elo, in Emerald and Platinum, this champion is statistically in S+, but maybe towards the lower MMRs, people don't know how to pilot her too well because she's very hard in terms of spacing. You really have to learn to space well. Camille, it all revolves around spacing. So, if I would say, bronze, silver, I put Camille S tier, and go towards platinum, emerald, I would put her S+ tier. She's one of the best champions in the game right now for top lane, which is very rare to see. Like, it's rare to see a top laner be S tier across every elo bracket. So in Masters plus, Diamond, Emerald, she's S+, but even up and towards Gold, she's considered S, and that's why I'm going to put her in S+ tier. She will also be S+ tier in the higher elo tier list, right? With every item getting nerfed and her having true damage, that is extremely good. I think her runes are really... My cat keeps wanting to get into my room, bro. Chill. Do I let him in? I'll let him in. Give me a second. Bro scratches on my door, begs for my attention for a full minute. I let him in and he just walks away. Alright, well, lesson learned. Okay, Camille has sustain. She has insane scaling, right? She's one of the best scaling champions in the game. She has good split push, and you can team fight with her as well. What's else to mention? What was I mentioning? Oh yeah, but with every item in the game being nerfed and her having true damage in her kit, that already makes her way better. Shield Bash is a very good rune, so she also makes great utilization of Shield Bash. How most laning phases Camille are going to go is you can go even or beat them in level 1 to level 5. After level 6, you kind of get weaker because your ultimate is more so a gank setup than like an aggressive 1v1 2. But after Trinity Force, you pretty much are able to 1v1 anything again, and every item that comes afterwards, you just keep spiking and spiking and spiking. This champion is amongst the best right now. Darius. I believe Darius has always been a good champion to play towards the lower MMRs. I just believe that this champion still requires quite some knowledge. And like, you need to know to push your limits on Darius. His kit is relatively simplistic, which is the beauty of it as well. But when you have a simplistic kit, what it's gonna boil down to is really understanding your all-in timers and knowing how to make use of your early game strength. So zoning your opponent from the first 3 minutes worth of EXP, for example, right? I'm a big Darius fan myself. I played in 2 Masters, right? And but I did struggle learning to play him because I was so not used to playing a melee champion without any dashes, right? With very low mobility. So I think he's in an okay state right now. Of course, his ultimate deals true damage, but with boots getting such hard nerfs, I think that also hit Darius one of the hardest because he's known to build boots first, right? I think he's in a solid A tier right now. I wouldn't put him in S tier. I think that's a pretty fair statement. I'm curious to see how he's performing. So I have U.GG open with some win rates on champions too. And it looks like they have considered Darius a D tier champion, but I don't believe him to be D tier. I think he's solid in A tier. Well, yeah, statistically, he's not performing the best right now, but I think this is a fine positioning as to where I would put him. We're gonna have Dr. Mundo. You all know how much I love Dr. Mundo if you've watched any of my videos. The thing, I like left to right is gonna matter. Mundo to me is the strongest top laner in the game right now. And that is because all items in the game have been nerfed, but honestly, Mundo's items have not been nerfed. In fact, Warmox got even like fine now because the addition of biscuits giving permanent health allows you to get the Warmox passive by just going biscuits. So you don't need to buy an extra Ruby Crystal. So you can rush Warmox and then you get Heartsteel. Heartsteel has not been really nerfed either. The only thing they nerfed in Warmox, by the way, is 1% movement speed. And they nerfed Heartsteel like health regen or something. But you already have Warmox, so you don't need health regen. And then Hullbreaker is actually buffed in terms of percentage, like it deals more damage. So they lowered the base AD, but they gave it more HP scaling, and Mundo buys so much HP, so Hullbreaker is good. So Titanic Hydra is still completely fine on it as well. Honestly, and then his tank items like the Spirit Visage and what's the the armor healing item. I can't think of it right now. But all his items are still good. Mundo was good before the item changes. Like when every champion basically became weaker, but Mundo is still on the same level. It pretty much raised him even further, right? And I was already Mundo, you know, fan before. This champion is absolutely bonkers. The downside of Mundo is his weakness is in early game laning, but he has insane scaling. One of the best scaling champions in the game. He's similar strength with level 16 spike as a Kayle or a Kassadin. A lot of people don't know this. I didn't know this until I started playing him. Even challenger players I have played with don't know this about Mundo, okay? So in a sense, he kind of has this hidden strength at level 16 as well. Don't tell people. Then he's insane split pushing because you run Demolish, and the more HP you have, the more Demolish damage you do as well. Stat check, pretty shit because you're just weak in the early game, but after Warmogs, you just become a beast. This champion, in my humble opinion, is the easiest way to start climbing towards your desired rank. If you are a silver player right now, you want to get to diamond, become a Mundo one trick for 6 months, I'm telling you, you're gonna be there. If you follow the fundamental steps, watch some of my guides on YouTube, all that stuff, you're gonna climb as Mundo. This champion is bonkers. They're gonna nerf him next patch. They're gonna remove some percentage of his HP converted to AD on his E by 0.04%, which is pretty massive. But even then, I still think Mundo will be amongst the best top laners. But we'll see. Fiora, I expected her to actually perform better. So Fiora has a few amazing things going for her. First things first, she has insanely good scaling, and Fiora has, in my opinion, one of the most broken passives in the game because she gets percentage health true damage. So you can't really itemize against this creature because she's dealing percentage health true damage. So building HP doesn't work, and building armor doesn't work because she's gonna shred through both. So I'm honestly surprised that she is not amongst the best. I expected her to be, you know, much stronger because of her passive and every item getting nerfed, but I suppose she's also very reliant on items in snowballing, and yeah, when we reach level 18 and everybody has full items, I don't think anybody can deal with a Fiora, but it's rare for the game to get to that point, and I believe that's why Fiora is also not necessarily that high. She has really good stat checking, right? She has basically 2 abilities at level 1 through her vitals and her Q. She has insanely good scaling, insanely good split pushing, but also her skill ceiling is extremely high, and I think that's also one of the biggest drawbacks towards lower MMR. I'm gonna put her in a solid A tier, and I would put her above Aatrox and Darius for sure. Yeah, now Cho'Gath, I would put in S tier. Generally speaking, I'm not a Cho'Gath fan, only when there was the Trinity build, so you would go Warmogs into Trinity Force Cho'Gath. I believe it's just not that good anymore, but statistically, and it surprised me too, Cho'Gath is performing pretty well. So let me pull up the stats here, see if I can find him. So he's actually performing pretty well. He doesn't have the highest play rate, but he's sitting at rank 15 in terms of win rate, which to me was pretty surprising. And he's not being played a low amount as well. And I just think, again, because health items like Warmogs haven't really gotten nerfed that hard. So tanks are just performing a little bit better in general. He's amazing at stat checking because of his passive, right? Giving him both sustain and just making it super hard to trade into him. So it's kind of like that brick wall that people don't really know how to deal with. He's super high base damages, his skills okay. Another thing that I could perhaps credit as to why Cho'Gath is good is because they nerfed a lot of movement speed in items. Less movement speed, easier to land your Qs, so perhaps also that's one reason as to why Cho'Gath is performing better. And yeah, I think he's very solid right now. Gangplank, see, I would either put him in B tier or wouldn't recommend for lower MMRs. And then this week, I'll put him in B tier. I don't think he's on the same level as Akshan. The reason I think Gangplank is very hard to play, it's an amazing champion, one of the best designed champions in the game, in my opinion. His passive grants him, makes him the highest gold scaling champion in the game, right? Because every time you Q a minion, you get more gold, and that works on your barrel too. But there's a few downsides. Like the stepping stone and the skill ceiling of this champion are both extremely high. I don't think there's many people that come close, for example, to Solar Baka's mechanics on Gangplank. And that's gonna add on to the fact that Gangplank is just very vulnerable to ganks, no mobility, right? And it's hard to solo carry a game with a Gangplank unless you're like a magician with barrels. So with Mundo, you just right click to people, press E and Q, and you can carry the game. With Gangplank, you need to have pixel perfect barrels, and then like have so many conditions for it to work out well. Paired with split pushing being very hard, you're very easy to get caught on side lanes. Very often you're gonna get pushed in the early game unless you really know how to play aggressive. So you should lose lane very often unless you're very good in Gangplank. You're very vulnerable to ganks, you're very vulnerable in side lanes. In terms of team fighting, you need some conditions. So this champion is just too hard. It needs too much to make it work. Therefore, I generally speaking just don't see Gangplank being that good in a solo queue environment. However, if you are pirate main towards lower MMRs and you're smurfing on them, good for you. I just think for the general player, I wouldn't recommend it. Garonchka. This champion apparently... He is in that room. Oh, I locked him up. Okay, look. There he is. He's the GOAT. Hey, hello. Maybe he wants to stay. That's my chair, though. He's sitting on my chair now. Move your fat ass. Okay. He's sitting behind me now. So, Garonchka. See, I'm putting this champion in A or S tier. For me, it's probably still an S tier champion. Now, this might be controversial, but look, his win rate is pretty low. Right? 37, 49% win rate. I don't know as to why that is. I don't consider Garen to be a D tier champion. I talked with a challenger Garen main. I think his name was Palco. He had 3 challenger accounts with Garen in NA. And he believes that Garen is still completely fine. I believe Garen is still completely fine. I played him quite some games myself too. Yeah, I mean, his items got nerfed, but every item got nerfed. He has 2 damage in his ultimate. And I just think Garen is one of those best lower MMR champions, right? For example, if you play 20 games with Garen and you play 20 games with Fiora, you're gonna be able to play Garen to 80% of his potential, whereas you're gonna be able to play Fiora to maybe 30-40% of her potential, right? So that is why I believe Garen is just one of those amazing champions to play. Infinite sustain through his passive. Good at split pushing, a lot of fallback patterns, scales extremely well with items, sustain, scaling, split pushing. He has all of those. I'm gonna put him in S tier. Garen and Mundo have always been my favorite champions towards the lower MR to recommend people to play. Yeah, he's statistically a little bit worse right now, especially if you compare him to Mundo, but I don't believe he's weak at all. So I would still recommend you playing Garen if you want to start climbing. Gnar. Gnar is a champion that I, generally speaking, always have kind of refrained from. I'm not a big fan of Gnar. I'm gonna put him in B tier. Whenever I describe Gnar, I would just describe him as jack of all trades, master of none. He's a raid champion, so he's like pretty good at being annoying in lane, but not super oppressive like a Vayne. He is pretty good engage, but you know, it's not gonna be similar to other champions. He's pretty good disengage, but again, not similar to other champions. He's okay at split pushing, okay at team fighting. I just feel like Gnar is a champion that is just extremely well-rounded and can do a bit of everything, but doesn't really do a specific thing clearly, right? I'm not a big Gnar connoisseur. I'm not a big range top lane player to begin with, for now. Yeah, I think the champion is alright, just not my cup of tea, not the best top laner to climb with consistently. I don't think you can hard carry games with Gnar, generally speaking. And statistically, he's also just not one of the best performers. Dragushka top, I'm gonna put him in B tier. This is mainly because the skill ceiling of making Gragas top work is very high. I remember I had to pick this champion or learn how to play this champion for competitive games, and honestly, you can have a very simplistic setup where you're just more so a neutralizer, you go grass, but you have very bad scaling. You have good sustain, and you're obnoxious to lane against, but most Gragas matchups, you actually lose priority in the early game, and then after first recall, you become very strong. But you need to be able to really know how to push your leech with Gragas, and every ability besides, I guess, his W is a skill shot. And you're very vulnerable. If you start falling behind, it's gonna feel terrible to play Gragas. You excel in team fights and split push, in team fights and in skirmishes, but even then, right, you need to land all of your abilities to really have impact. This champion is just very conditional, and that's why I think it's hard to make him work to carry game consistently. Therefore, I don't really recommend playing Gragas that much. Gwen, for me, she's S tier. I don't think she's S+. I don't think she's as good as Gwen or as Mundo and Camille, but I would say she's very similar to Camille in gameplay, in the way I described Camille. So, Gwen, and this is funny as well. I have a brother. I say little brother, but honestly, he's not that much younger than me. And he was pretty new to League of Legends, and he started just maining Gwen, one-tricking Gwen, and he got all the way to Diamond 1. So I believe this champion is completely fine for people to play towards the lower MMRs. You're gonna learn a lot about spacing and playing around your cooldowns. And the thing for the Gwen is she's pretty bad with sustain, so she doesn't really have sustain, but she's one of the best split pushers, has insane scaling, she has percentage health in her passive and true damage in her Q. So of course, with every item getting nerfed, that's amazing for Gwen having true damage and percentage health damage. Notoriously, she's always been an amazing scaling champion. I don't know, I love Gwen. Gwen is my second favorite champion in the game after Riven. I just believe that she's completely solid right now. The items on her are pretty good too. I've tried her a few games myself. I really like her. The 3 champions that I thought would be very good were Nasus, Gwen, and Camille. And yeah, Gwen and Camille to me are both extremely good. That's that. I mean, do I want to talk about Heimer top? Okay, like, I've never played a game of Heimer in my life. I know very little about him. It's annoying to lane against him. But, so, you have strong early lane. Keep pushing in. But you have pretty bad scaling. You're bad at split pushing later on. You're bad at progressing side lane. I don't know how Heimerdinger wins games besides by team fighting and people running into his turrets. I just don't know how to win a game on a Heimerdinger. He's conditional, it's hard to pull off, hard to carry games with consistently. With Gwen, you kill somebody with your ultimate and you hack down turrets. Same with Mundo. With Heimer, you sit in a, I don't know, you just need people to walk to your turrets and pray for the best. I don't think Heimer is good, he's conditional. Don't play him if you want to climb consistently. There we go. Illaoi kind of has everything regarding the S's. She is a stat check champion, right? People hate playing against Illaoi. She has a shit ton of sustain. Every time she lands one of her tentacles, she gets a lot of healing. She has insane split pushing, and she has pretty good scaling with items as well. So she has all 4 of these S's. And, well, to no surprise, she's also considered S tier. In this tier list, as you guys can see, and we're going around gold right now because it's pretty much the middle, right? But she's S tier in most lower elos. Honestly, I think it's even safe to put her above Camille. I just think this champion kind of has everything you would want. Like I said, she has all 4 of those S's. She's pretty simplistic kit as well. It's a matter of landing E, winning the trade, playing around your tentacles, put some tentacles on the wall, and smash people down. You can perma push in, you can very often even 2v1, especially when they're melee centered. You have a very clear game plan, which is 99% of the time just going to be split pushing and, you know, killing people. Most of her items are still completely fine as well. I think she's also a champion that really benefited from some item changes, like Iceborne Gauntlet. I think she can use really well. I think she uses Hullbreaker very well. Yeah. Maybe I should make some more Illaoi content, honestly. I think this champion is very strong right now. Irelia. I'll probably put the champion in B tier. I'm gonna be surprised if she's anywhere above that. And that is because Irelia, in terms of stepping stone, is very, very, very hard to pull off. Because you almost lose all your matchups in top lane, unless you really know what you're doing. I would use Irelia mainly as a counterpick to certain ranged champions, like, for example, a Ryze or a Karma, Jayce, Gnar, these type of champions she tends to do well into, right? But, for example, if we look here, she loses to almost all of these matchups. She hard beats Mundo, so we scratch away Mundo, but she loses to most of these champions. And I think we can also kind of center this tier list somewhat around matchups, right? The thing is with Irelia, what she excels at is she has... well, let's talk about her downsides first, honestly, because we put her in B tier. Again, she is a very high stepping stone. She's very hard to pull off. Most of your matchups, you're going to be, you know, already 0-1 down because you just lose most of your matchups. She's actually very hard to pull off because when you're in side lane, you're pretty much as vulnerable as a Gangplank, unless you have a minion wave, but even then, right, you usually can't use a minion wave to escape, so it's hard to split push on Irelia. It's hard to kill people and progress in side lane, so you have to kind of team fight. And so what you're gonna learn is that when you play Irelia, you kind of need to win your laning phase in order to be a champion. If you lose lane as Irelia, you're not gonna be a champion. You're very easy to get picked off in side lane, and in team fights, you need condition, right? Because 1 CC and you're dead. So this champion is one of the hardest champions to play in League of Legends, in my opinion. Therefore, making it just very hard to fight with this champion consistently. And statistically, she's also one of the worst performers. And I think everything matches what I've said. I think she's an amazing design. It's just, to me, a situational pick. And she's too conditional. Mr. Jax, I'm going to put Jax in A tier. Of course, with the return of Lethal Tempo, I believe Jax to be one of the best benefiters from that. I think his items are completely fine right now, too. Jax, to me, is actually one of the most well-rounded top laners. He is good early game. He has good scaling, good skirmishing, good team fighting, good split pushing. So he can kind of do everything, right? He's a very well-rounded top laner. What he lacks in is sustain. He's very high mana pool, and he has no sustain in terms of HP other than when you're buying lifesteal. And also with biscuits getting removed, this champion is even more mana hungry, right? So that is one of the big drawbacks for Jax, and it's also what I noticed when playing him. But he's very good in 1v1. He's very good in skirmishes, team fighting, split pushing. He's a very well-rounded top laner. So therefore, I believe Jax is in a stable position right now. In the higher MMRs, he's a S+ tier. I think here he's a solid A tier. And yeah, I don't think you're really wrong picking Jax. Jayce, yeah, I'm going to say I simply wouldn't recommend this champion. I think Jayce historically has been a, you know, pretty bad champion to play towards the lower. You gotta put him in B tier. I think wouldn't recommend Akshan, Jayce. They're very close to me. Everything I said about Akshan is kind of true about Jayce as well. The stepping stone of learning how to play Jayce, playing with 2 forms, having so many abilities is already pretty tricky. You have a lot of different potential rune setups depending on matchup and team comps. You're a very vulnerable champion. And that is paired with you kind of having to win lane to be able to be useful on Jayce, right? So this champion is one of the most oppressive, like Akshan, but you really need to know what you're doing, and if you fall behind, well, you're a Jayce without mobility that can just get picked off every time. If you're ahead, you're super oppressive, but even when you are ahead, it's very easy to lose your lead, because 1 point of CC, or losing a kill to, you know, a champion that's going to outskill you, is going to be hard to progress. So, generally speaking, don't recommend change towards the lower MMRs, simply because of those reasons. We have Jayce, Jarvan, these are all AD carry piggies. Karma top, don't play it. Simplistic. Kayle. I think Kayle is a solid 8. Now, I haven't played Kayle since the changes. I know Fleet has been nerfed, but Lethal Tempo has returned. So actually, I have no information on this champion. I'm going to pull up the tier list first and see where she's at. Okay, she's B tier, but she's same with Jax, kind of, right? I think that's a fine description. I think I'll put it in A tier. Like, I don't really have a D tier, right? So I think this is an okay A tier position. Maybe she's low B tier, like at the front of B tier. It's just that what I like about Kayle towards the lower MMRs is that games are lasting longer in general, which is going to allow you to get to that level 16 spike and become a menace, right? People don't really know how to abuse you well enough in lane. She's one of the best champions to farm resources. Again, I don't know what rune she's running right now, though. You probably go Lethal Tempo or Fleet, so I'm not entirely sure on Kayle, but when I'm gonna do my ranged top climb, I'll make sure to play some Kayle games. And her biggest downside is that she's very easy to shut down, and usually you're not gonna reach your level 16 spike, but I already said that when the game tends to last longer and people don't know how to abuse you as well, she can do fine, right? But yeah, you're gonna struggle against most of the S+ tier champions for sure. Let's say you're playing Mundo into Kayle, I would always want to be a Mundo instead. Okay, Kennen. See, Kennen is S+ tier in high right now. Quick little, you know, hint already. But I believe for lower MMR, I am putting him in... I should sort the B tier as well. I think Gnar deserves to be probably here. No, Kennen deserves to be here. Then maybe Gnar. What would I put this in order with? I think this is fine order like this. Kennen is kind of A tier or low B. See, the thing is, he's a very oppressive champion. Kennen has always been one of the best blind picks because he can deal with both range champions. For example, an oppressive champion like Jayce just loses against Kennen in the early game because he has so much set check potential and he goes D-Blade right and E attack speed and he has a stun. Just very annoying to play against his kit. And you can go very aggressive runes with Domination Airy. So you're just very obnoxious to lane against in the early game. Kennen's one of his biggest strengths is his lane dominance. But he's a pretty hard skill, let's say a hard kit to pull off to carry games with, right? You're a teamfight oriented champion. And so a lot of times when I lane into a Kennen as a melee champion, the mentality that I have is all I need to do is go even with Kennen in lane if I can. If I go 10-20 CS down, that's alright, because after laning phase, Kennen kind of struggles. He's pretty easy to catch off in side lane. He doesn't farm sideways or jungle camps as fast as most of the other bruiser options that we have. And so Kennen is very lane dominant, but if you're not winning your lane, it's gonna feel pretty bad to play Kennen, right? Your scaling is alright, but you're conditional, right? You kind of want those teamfight options. You don't necessarily want to be split pushing. And you see here with my reasoning, every time I feel like a champion can split push, I tend to put them higher than when they cannot split push, right? But this is also kind of what we see. If a champion can progress on side lane and be consistent through that, you're always going to have options in a solo queue environment. But when, let's say, you're winning lane as Kennen, but your whole team is losing, you can't split push, and you want to team fight, although you kind of don't want to team fight, right? Well, let's say you are a Mundo, your whole team is losing, you can still split push, and you don't necessarily have to team fight, although you can, right? Same goes for like Aatrox, what we talked about. You kind of want to team fight instead of split pushing, but let's say your team is losing, right? Or you could gather more resources by just being a split push champion. They would simply do better. Kled, I would expect this champion to be S tier, but that is because I believe he's very impressive to lane against. He's either S tier or A tier. See, Kled is just very obnoxious. I don't know what items he goes right now, but I tried some Kled myself before the item changes, and lethality Kled felt very disgusting. So I would go Profane Hydra, Cyclo Sword into full lethality. You probably go a similar orientation right now where you're building lethality Kled. The lacks of Kled in the past were that he had a very low wave clear, and he didn't skill so well, but when you go lethality with Profane Hydra, you have insanely good wave clear, you skill very well, and a lot of your abilities do a shit ton of damage. Now, The reason why I like Kled so much is because, first of all, people don't really know how to play against him correctly. His W is a cooldown that he cannot control, but a lot of people don't notice. I've even coached master players that did not know how Kled's W works. So basically, he cannot control the cooldown. Just on the first auto attack that he does, when it's up, he's going to use his W cooldown. He's good at stat checking, right? He has 2 forms, he has 2 rotations of abilities as well, so he's a good stat check champion. His scaling is actually pretty good. He can split push, and he can team-fight with his ultimate. Sustain, not that much, but I guess if you count in the horse form getting back, he is okay sustain. I think Kled is a pretty well-rounded champion, and if you learn to optimize his kit and learn to be aggressive on the champion, I think he can catch a lot of people off guard, and he even does fine into most of these S+ tier champions. So I think Kled is actually just... I would put him here. I think Kled deserves a good spot. He's pretty, you know, annoying that once you fall behind, you're gonna be pretty useless, but yeah, the playstyle of Kled is kind of feast or famine, and I think he's pretty all-rounded. Similar to Jax, but I just think Kled does it better and has an easier way to execute it. K'Sante, I wouldn't recommend for lower more. And let's move on. No, I'm kidding. I've never played a game of K'Sante in my life, but I've played against the champion so much that I kind of know what he does, right? They've changed him again, but the reason this champion has always been hard to balance for Riot, in my view, is that he's extremely good in pro play, and he is terrible, like bottom of the win rate in lower MMR for basically since the champion got released. Now, as weird as this sounds, K'Sante actually has a high skill ceiling. This champion has a lot of buttons that you need to press, a lot of potential combos, right? Out of the tank class, he is probably the highest skill ceiling tank that exists. So many different abilities, so many options that you can go for. But this champion doesn't have good, let's say, carry potential, right? You have a lot of conditions. You are a tank, you rely on your team to carry you. No split push options. Not the best scaling, not the best, let's say, sustain, all this stuff. I just, like, historic, like, look, if we pull up here, I'm certain, yeah, okay, there we go. Like, he's amongst the lowest, right? So I wouldn't recommend K'Sante for any lower MMR player. He goes in a wouldn't recommend. There you go, very simplistic. Malphite is kind of the opposite. He's always been a good performer in the lower MMRs. I think Malphite, for me, is amongst the worst top laners to blind pick in higher MMR, but I think in lower MMR he can get away with it, and that's because his kit is so simplistic, and you're always going to be somewhat useful. So every kit is basically every ability is point click, right? Besides your ultimate, but if you miss Malphite ultimate, you need to do some, like, you probably have other issues. So, I think Malphite is a very well-rounded champion. Even if you're 0-10 as a Malphite, you can still be a deciding factor in the game if you land one good ultimate. Downside of this champion, pretty bad split pushing, right? But with the amount of skirmishes that are also tending to happen in the lower MMRs, I think you can always make use of him. He's a very good stat checker, lane neutralizer. You can play against both melee champions, you can play against range as well. The thing that Malphite struggles the hardest with is playing against other tanks. You hard lose against Mundo, you hard lose against people like Illaoi. Sion, for example, completely destroys Malphite. Cho'Gath destroys Malphite. So you lose against most other tanks, but you beat pretty much everything else in lane. And yeah, I'm a big Malphite connoisseur myself. I think Malphite is just solid S tier, amongst the best tanks that you can play towards the lower MMRs. I think Cho'Gath is slightly better, and Mundo is way better. But Malphite definitely third for me on that list. Maokai, I mean, Maokai top, I wouldn't recommend. And like, I know there's some Maokai top connoisseurs. I haven't played Maokai top or seen Maokai top in a very long time. And that's because I just believe Maokai is a weaker version of either Malphite or Cho'Gath or Mundo. I just think this champion belongs in the jungle. That's it. Don't play Maokai top. I'm not going to spend more time on him. I'm sorry for the Maokai fans out there. That's just the way it is. Mordekaiser. S+ tier. Another S+ tier champion. Simply amazing. Top of the charts leaderboard. Very simplistic kid. He is a good neutralizer. He's a good stat check champion. Has amazing scaling. Has split push potential. Has teamfight potential. What else? Sustain he has as well, right? He kind of has everything. I just know that people really struggle playing against the champion towards lower MMRs. I've heard countless people complain to me, how do I play against Mordekaiser? How do you deal with him, right? His kit is super simplistic. Good items. I think he's just a very solid top laner, and he's notoriously known to just be a very good champion to play towards lower MMRs. I said it at the start, the higher elo you go, the worse Mordekaiser is going to be, but in the lower MMRs, he's amazing. So when I did my climb playing beginner champions to like a Grandmaster Challenge MMR, right? I love playing Mordekaiser in lower MMR, but man, I hated playing in a higher MMR. The rotations are so fast, and you're very often just late to certain fights. But it's very easy to win lane with Mordekaiser as well. You're just such a good stat champion, so there is that. To Nasus, which is another S+ tier champion, I think Nasus is benefiting from the item changes. Iceborne Gauntlet is disgusting on Nasus if you're playing against melee champions. Trinity Force is still good against everything else, but there's this build that I'm running right now. We've called it Ice Age Nasus build. You go for Frozen Heart, you go for Iceborne Gauntlet, and then you just adapt to whatever's happening, and you go W max second. Your W cripples them, your Q slows them, Iceborne Gauntlet removes their attack speed. It's disgusting, by the way. So this champion has a very good kit. His Q gives him infinite damage, right? In terms of scaling. His ultimate is an amazing ability on like pairing with his Q and the amount of stats that it grants you. And then his W is one of the most disgusting abilities that exist in the game. I think his kit is very strong, paired with the fact that every champion or every item got weaker, but his items didn't necessarily get that much weaker, and he just has such a good kit. So Nasus has gone up, right? Every champion with a very good kit has gone up. And again, the logic we use on Kayle with people not really understanding how to abuse you in the early game, paired to the fact that the games last longer so you can get more stacks, just make Nasus, like, giving him all the recipes to always be in a good spot. He is insane sustain. He has one of the most expensive stats in the game through his passive, which is lifesteal. He's insane scaling, insane split push potential, can teamfight as well. You can almost 1v1 anybody on sideline, and especially in the mid game. Nasus is just a beast. What can I say? Honestly, if we're gonna order everything up, I would put him above Camille. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Olaf Kus. A or B tier. See, the thing is, I believe Olaf got some direct nerfs to top lane, mainly in mana cost. So first of all, his ultimate costs 100 mana now, which most ultimates do, but before it was 0 cost, I believe. His Q mana cost is also increased. Biscuits are removed, right? So a champion that kind of relies on mana, that has no more biscuits access, has made Olaf weaker in my opinion. But he is one of those amazing stat checking champions in the early game, right? Because whenever you pick your Q up, it goes lower cooldown, and the more HP you lose, the more attack speed you grant through your passive. You have good lifesteal and sustain through your W. You have good 1v1 potential. You have okay split push and decent team fighting. I think that kind of summarizes Olaf for me. I think he's alright. He's like top, like low A, top B tier. I don't think he's that strong right now, but I also don't think he is super weak. But yeah, every S tier champion is gonna outscale him and be able to somewhat do okay against him. So yeah, you also get outscaled very often as Olaf. And I don't think, I think he is very solid here. Ornn. Ornn is interesting to me. I know Macro right now, our Ornn father over in EU West, is climbing very fast on Ornn right now, and he says it's very strong. Of course, with items getting nerfed and him being able to upgrade it, it's good. Tank items were the least nerfed, so I'm actually very curious where this champion ranks in terms of win rate right now for the lower MMRs, because I actually would not be able to... Oh, wait a second. Wow, I didn't expect that. He is on S tier even. Now that really catches me off guard. So I guess he's gonna go here. I think this is a fair placing, maybe even above the Cho'Gath. Wow, I did not expect Ornn to be that high. That actually really catches me off guard. That's the biggest surprise to me right now. See, Ornn is a tank that is able to be probably the most aggressive in lane, right? He can really look for a lot of solo kills, a lot of solo kill potential. He is always valuable. Let's say you're farming even. Right, 2-item Ornn against a 2-item Camille. Ornn is still extremely good because you can always hold side lane. You have an insane teamfight potential, but you also make all your teammates stronger by default by upgrading their items, right? That's maybe a big reason as to why. Probably his items are getting much weaker, paired with the fact that he can make items stronger. And he's always been... But I'm just so surprised with seeing this high win rate. Because in general, the downsides of Ornn, of course, and that's the downside of any tank, is that you're not really able to split push. And you more so rely on those teamfight environments to be able to win the game. So yeah, you have really good lane, you're a good neutralizer and a stat checker. You have pretty poor sustain, but you can buy items in lane, right? So you have that. Terrible split pushing, good scaling, I guess. So he reaches a lot of marks. I guess S tier is very fine for him. I'm surprised because I would also say that most of these champions tend to do pretty good into Ornn. Ornn definitely is the one that catches me the most off guard. Pantheon is getting a buff. I don't think it's a big buff. I'm gonna assume this champion is around A tier. I don't think he's gonna be much higher than that. I think Pantheon to me very similar to Olaf, low A, high B. So Pantheon, as weird as it sounds, pretty simplistic kit, but his skill ceiling is high. He's super annoying to play against in the early game, but after level 6, similar to Camille, he kind of falls off in laning pressure, right? Because your ultimate is a roaming tool, not necessarily a 1v1 tool. So that's one big factor that you lose out on. This champion requires you to have very good macro understanding, and you need to be able to take a lead in the early laning phase and not give that away in the mid game to get to your late game position. I know that Pantheon actually scales very well to the late game. I think his like level 3 ultimate mark gives him the passive of like armor penetration. I know he gets armor penetration from something based on his level, and therefore he actually has pretty good scaling. So Pantheon's spike is kind of like very good early, then falls off a little bit mid game, and then skills again into the late game. So this is what I mean with, you need to really learn to like get your lead in lane, then chill in the mid game, and then skill into the late game. But very often people tend to do okay in laning phase, and then drop, and then it's just like, how was the game gonna go, you know? So if you're able to use your champion well, abuse your matchups, and skill into the game while playing good macro, I think the champion can be extremely impressive. But again, you die once, you fall behind, you're terrible in mid game, you're gonna be pretty much a useless champion. So feast or famine, but not as easy to execute as the Kled, for example. So that's why I'm putting him in A tier. Win, I suppose. I put her in the middle of A tier. I think out of the range champions that I have written off, like a Jayce, like an Akshan, I think Quinn is a little bit easier to execute, a more simplistic kit. You have the lethality setup or even the Strikebreaker rush setup that I've seen. Even if you fall behind, you're so fast around the map that you can always get resources somewhere and still end up scaling pretty decently. It's just that, as every range champion that I highlight, is that once you start falling behind, it's very hard to get back into the game. And you're very vulnerable, always, right? You're playing a range champion, no dashes. So if you're in side lane, you get caught by any CC in side lane or team fight, you're always dead. But you also come with the benefit that you have an impressive laning phase. You're going to be able to win most of your laning phases. You skill pretty good, no sustain, but a really good stat check, right? Okay split pushing. Yeah, you're alright as Quinn. I think that pretty much encapsulates, is that a word? It came to my mind. That, my thoughts on Quinn. Poppy. Poppy is either S+ or top S tier. Poppy is notoriously known as a tank killer, but also a melee bruiser denier. And actually, I'm curious to see her win rate. A tier? To me, she's S tier. This champion is a relatively simplistic kit, but the way you utilize it is still going to be up to you, right? But with tank items not getting the biggest nerfs, Poppy comes on the top of the leaderboard with tanks for me as well. Honestly, I'm noticing that tanks are actually very strong, right? We have Malphite, Cho'Gath, Ornn, and Poppy and S tier. But yeah, tanks are very good. I already said tanks are probably going to become more meta. Win rates don't lie, stats don't lie. And yeah, when tanks are going to receive the least amount of nerfs on their items, they're always going to be, you know, better, because bruiser items got nerfed pretty hard. So besides the bruisers that we've mentioned, yeah, it's harder to really progress through these tanks. I'm not saying it's a tank meta, but tanks definitely have gotten stronger. But yeah, Poppy beats most tanks, so that's very good, right? Poppy is a tank destroyer in terms of her kit, because she has a lot of percentage health damage, high base damage. She's also a melee champion neutralizer. Riven into Poppy, you don't want to play that matchup, trust me. Camille into Poppy, also terrible. Fiora into Poppy, all these matchups, like, you hate Poppy as a melee bruiser champion. Or a melee bruiser player, rather. Her downside is that she has terrible split push potential. She doesn't scale as well later into the game, right? You are early game and mid game monster, but you don't scale too well towards the later parts. So you want to have that teamfight potential, but in early game and in like laning phase and early to mid, you are a menace. And your kit is relatively simplistic. There's so many dashes in the game that you can control, and one good W can completely control an entire game. I think this champion is just, yeah, I think I've described everything as to why I'd put it in S tier. Again, the downside is that you're a tank. I generally speaking avoid playing tanks in solo queue, as I like to be in a position where I can kind of have those split push options, right? As you won't really have those as tanks. But I think this is a pretty solid position for me to put Poppy in. The tier list disagrees with me in terms of here. She's a lower win rate than Cho'Gath even. But I don't know. If we're following the win rates, it would be around this. So it would be like so, I would say. But is this a better one? Maybe it is. They're all good, right? I just think Poppy, things as well. Gwen tends to do okay against all of these. Besides the early laning phase, you completely lose to Poppy as Gwen. Maybe this is more accurate. I'm fine with this. Yeah, let's put it like this. Renekton. I'm assuming this champion is like mid A tier. I don't know too much about Renekton right now. As you guys know, I tend to permaban Renekton. So I'm actually gonna check his win rate. And he's D tier in terms of win rate. He's it's lower than I anticipated. So I'm gonna change my mind here and put him on B. based on the statistic that we see in terms of win rate. The main reason, I guess, for Renekton to get here is because, well, what does Renekton excel in? His kit is very simplistic. So Renekton's kit is pretty simplistic, right? Which is a good thing because it's gonna make it easier for you to pick up the champion to start playing him with. He is absolutely lane dominant. But this is a plus point and a downside, because when you play a lane dominant champion, it's also what you have to kind of excel in order to make Renekton work. So Renekton is an early game monster. You can outstat check most champions. At level 6, you can win almost any 1v1, 2v1s, 2v2s, especially if you're an AP jungler, right? This champion becomes even more impressive to lane against. Because the Renekton W guaranteed with any AP setup like an Elise, Talia, Nidalee, Udyr type champions, right? It's super hard to lane against this. I permaban Renekton for those reasons because it's so annoying to lane against him. But the downsides of Renekton is that if you don't meet those conditions where you're winning lane or you're even losing lane, playing Renekton from behind is one of the worst feelings. You fall off because you don't really have that much scaling in the items that you buy and in your kit. He only has armor penetration in his E Fury. Other than that, you're gonna fall off in the mid to late stages, right? For example, when we're looking at Mundo with percentage of scaling, Camille having true damage, Nasus having infinite Q, right? Renekton doesn't have those kind of benefits. When you're playing Renekton, you want to win lane, and then from winning your lane, you can control the entire game and like hold everybody down. But if you go even or you lose lane, you're not gonna feel as oppressive. And paired with all the items getting nerfed and this champion not having the best scalings in his kit, that's probably why he's not performing so well right now. But I wouldn't write him off. I still think he's in an okay position right now. As I said, I permaban him. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Renekton. I still think he's fine to play if you are good at playing your level up timers and playing aggressive in the early game. Rengar top. It's a niche pick that I like. I just don't know where I put him right now with Fleet getting nerfed and with all the items getting changed. So I would probably put him somewhere in A tier. Rengar top has been one of the niche picks in top lane that I have thought that has always been good. In the past splits, and especially at the start of the season, he was actually the highest win rate top for a very long time. He is super oppressive to lane against. I've played against my fair share of Rengar top 1 tricks, and this is always the champions where I get fear from. The MENA region, there was one very good Rengar top player, and when I was in Korea, there were actually 3 challenger Korean top Rengar players. So the benefit when you are a Rengar top 1 trick is that it's a niche champion, and people don't really know how to play against this kit. Even I sometimes don't understand how he's healing back to full HP with his W every single time. So you're gonna have a knowledge advantage being a Rengar main in the top lane. That is to begin with, right? People sometimes don't understand certain kits, like let's say a Kled. People will not understand how to lane against Rengar because he's almost not shown in top lane, right? So that's one big benefit. Then paired with that is you have insane stat check potential through your passive, granting you an extra ability that is empowered, right? You have insane trading potential. You have insane sustain through your W. Your scaling is good with items. You can go for both Bruiser and Lethality, but probably Lethality is best. And split pushing is harder because you kind of have to kill your opponent before you can start hitting turrets, because else you're pretty much similar to like an Irelia or like a Gangplank that's gonna hit a turret on the sideline, right? You're champion without any dashes. Downsides is when you fall behind this Rengar, you are a walking pile of shit. This champion has pretty high skill intensity when you need to learn how to use your combos and how to play aggressive. But yeah, I think he does it better than the Renekton, for example. And he has more fallback patterns and options like roams and stuff like this. So Riven, it's low B or wouldn't recommend right now. She is gonna get a buff next patch though. So since Riven is gonna get a buff, we're gonna give her the benefit of the doubt and we're gonna put her here B tier. And that is because Riven, I know Riven is broken. See, listen, I hate playing as Riven myself. I hate playing against a Riven one trick. It's such an annoying champion to lane against. But right now, guys, you have to face it. Be real with me. Riven is one of the weakest spots she's ever been in. She has no scaling in her kit in terms of armor penetration, 2 damage, percentage health, anything like this. You all get it from items. Everything like armor penetration is from items. All items in the game are nerfed. Riven is nerfed. Cleaver got one of the massive hits ever. Probably the items that got hit the most, which is one of her core items. Eclipse got hit pretty hard as well. Son of the Sky got hard nerfed. Sojourn got hard nerfed. Most of her items have gotten nerfed. And she is this, like, basically Riven's kit is completely dependent on the strength of items on how strong Riven is going to be. That's bad English, but you get my point. When you put that, all of that, what I just explained about items, and then paired with the fact that Riven is one of the few champions in the game with no sustain from her kit and very low health regeneration from her kit. So you're playing a champion that has pretty bad scaling because of items, and you have no sustain in lane, and in terms of how you want to play your matchups, they're hard as well, because Riven is a skill-intensive champion, right? So when you compare Riven to Irelia, they're both skill-intensive, but Irelia at least have sustain. Riven doesn't have this. So Riven is super feast or famine, and this is also why I love her, right? So you're either going to go 10-0, or you're probably going to go 0-10. If you go even or behind as Riven, it's not that good. You want to learn how to go ahead. Now, her kit allows her to do that, right? Because if you are behind against a Riven, it feels terrible to play. But if you take one bad trade as a Riven player, good luck laning. And one bad reset leads to you falling behind, and then you really never get back up unless your opponent makes a mistake. And this is why Riven is statistically, as you guys can see, amongst the lowest win rates towards the lower MMRs. And this has notoriously always been so. And again, the list goes as follows. Very high stepping stone and skill sitting playing Riven. You need to invest a lot of time into learning how to play your matchups, because you need to play your matchups with different skill orders in the sense of like how you use your abilities. In some matchups you're gonna have to start the trade with an E. In some matchups you have to never use your E to, let's say, gap close, because as you die, you're gonna have to learn to play without sustain, no fallback patterns. Now you have pretty good scaling with items and your feast or famine. You really have to, you know, if you play 100 games of Riven and you play 100 games of Mundo, you're going to be 90% of Mundo gameplay and you're going to play like 30% of Riven gameplay, right? So you're just not going to be as good on the champion at all. Rumble, apparently Rumble is just like even worse win rate than Riven. The champion has got nerf after nerf after nerf after nerf. That's because it's been the best blind pick and lane dominant champion in top lane in competitive, but well, when you're playing in platinum, you're not a no, I'm kidding, guys. I'm so sorry. I don't want to go down that road. But basically, the reason Rumble is so oppressive is because he beats every lane in the isolated 1v1, be the range champion, be the melee champion, be the tank. You can't really neutralize him in an isolated 1v1. However, if you go even against Rumble, you outskill him after 1 to 2 items. You will be able to perma-kill him inside lane. Let's say I'm playing Camille into Rumble. I hard lose level 1 to level 9. Second I get my Trinity Force, Rumble cannot walk into a single side lane anymore because I will kill him permanently over and over. And that is why Rumble doesn't function well, because you need to know how to get the maximum out of his kit to be able to perform well when playing Rumble. So you're super oppressive, you can win most of your matchups, but if you die once, good luck laning the rest of the game and playing side lane ever. And that's paired with all the nerfs that he's gotten. So yeah, he has not the best scaling, not the best split pushing, no sustain, and he's insane at stat check. Insane stat checking. But that's also all the eggs that are in his basket, right? So this is why he's so good for a competitive environment, because this guy will win his lane, secures you grub, secures you herald, stuff like this, and he is still winning lane whilst doing so. And this is also why you saw so many lane swaps. Every time a Rumble was picked, there was always a lane swap going on. Nobody wants a lane to Rumble. Yeah, then once Rumble reached that mid game, he's pretty much a lot weaker, right? But if you want to carry the game in solo queue environment, you can't just bank in on winning lane and winning the game from that. That's why don't play Rumble. I simply wouldn't recommend him. And the stats don't lie. Ryze top, I believe, is actually pretty good right now. I usually don't put Ryze in this tier list, but I saw some Ryze popularity growing. I think he's an okay spot right now. He's just a very simplistic champion. One of the big things that I would be looking out for when playing Ryze top is I want to have an AD jungler, like a Jarvan, Skarner, Lee Sin, these type of champions, right? Because if you do EW, they're rooted for 1.5 seconds, and then with like a Lee Sin Q or Jarvan EQ or anything like this, like a Viego, Kindred, that makes him very good, right? And with AD junglers coming back into the meta a little bit more, I think Ryze top has pretty much raised, because he's an okay stable top lane champion. And yeah, I don't know too much about Ryze other than just him pairing really good with AD junglers, and he skills pretty well. It's just that this champion, I mean, honestly, no, I'm gonna put him in B tier, because notoriously, you die once on Ryze, you're super vulnerable, and this champion is actually very hard to pilot. So I'm gonna put him in B tier. I think that's safer. Set. Set has always been a good low MMR champion, and this is because he has a lot of marks hit. So first things first, he is good at, I'm gonna put him in higher than 80. I'm gonna put him here. So insane stat check potential, right? Everybody knows you cannot walk up to a set. He presses E, he bashes your skull in. He has good sustain through his passive mostly. He's good split pushing options. He skills all right. I do think he didn't bet, like the item changes have hurt him quite a bit. I think Threadbreaker is still okay-ish. Hullbreaker is probably a really good addition for Set if you would go for a more health-oriented build. So I think he's in okay position right now. The thing is, when you're playing Set, you really want to make sure that you're getting early game aggression in. You want to play aggressive in the early game, get some good trades in. Mid game, you're a lot weaker. I don't know. What is his win rate actually? Let me check his win rate out. What is it performing at? 28 B tier. Yeah, okay. I think he's saved that at A tier where I'm putting him. Good stat check. Okay sustain. Good split push options. Kind of similar to Darius. You're playing a melee champion without dashes, and you're amongst, like, let's say top 5 strongest early game champions because your passive basically allows you to auto-attack twice when everybody is auto-attacking once, and you have an extra ability too. So you really want to make sure that you learn how to play aggressive in the early game, trying to zone your opponent from the first 3 melees or XP, setting up your dives, spread, and like snowballing your lead, right? And that's pretty much it. But playing set from behind, you're a walking pile of dung. So yeah, you really want to learn how to use your early game aggression, which is again a benefit and a downside. Shen. You know, you all know that I hate Shen, but Shen, I believe, is either S+ or top S tier. I'm gonna do some research first. Where is he in low rank? Because in high elo, this is like amongst the strongest champions, but let's see where he's performing here. Okay, yeah, to no surprise, he is at rank 7 actually. And the reason as to why is because Shield Bash, like I mentioned with Camille, is absolutely disgusting, and Shen is one of the best users of Shield Bash because his passive always gives him a shield, and then with his Q, you drag it through your opponents, and then the Shield Bash proc, Grass proc, and the hit. This champion is disgustingly strong. Grass is gonna get a bit of a nerf, but yeah, Heartsteel also is one of the items that did not get nerfed. Shen is an amazing user of Heartsteel. I think that Matt's play is even used on Shen right now. We have a lot of Shen players in EU. We have Expat too, but he doesn't play that much right now. And then we have Shending Help. He ended rank 7 in the US ladder, but he's an amazing player. I've always been a big fan of Shending Help. So yeah, this champion is actually S+ tier. I'm gonna put him here. Shending Help also agreed with me that Mundo is probably the strongest top laner right now. So I wanted to put that out there. But I even saw a screenshot coming by of Shending Help having one game dealing 5k damage with Shield Bash, which is ridiculous. Honestly, Shen, I did the unranked 2 master on Shen before, and that's the only champion that I actually ended up quitting because I was so tired playing Shen in the solo queue environment. But now that he's gotten so strong, it might be time for me to revisit Shen and hope that he's coming back with the milk, because he went out for milk and he did not come back, so I couldn't pick in Shen anymore. Might be time for... I'm actually motivated to play Shen again, try this champion out, because he is very strong right now. Yeah, right? He's a tank. Tank items didn't really get nerfed. Shield Bash has gotten changed, is amazing for Shen. Paired with the fact that he was already pretty strong, he's S+ tier right now, absolutely. Singed. Singed is also probably top S. Singed is gonna get a pretty big nerf, I believe. His base armor is getting nerfed. I just think with every item in the game getting nerfed, Singed just raises in priority. His kit has always been pretty strong, and he's kind of stat check heavy with his poison, right? And he actually skills very well too with items. Tank items are good on him. AP items are good on him. I think Singed is just in a very good spot. I'm not a big Singed connoisseur myself. Almost every stream, there's like 3 players that come, 3 different ones, and say, when are you gonna play Singed? When are you gonna play Singed? When are you gonna play Singed? Honestly, it might be time for me to try out Singed one time. One thing I will say about Singed though is that I don't think this is a champion that you play casually. Mostly when I see Singed players, they're either one-tricks or they int on him, right? If you just play a game randomly like, I'm gonna play a game with Singed, you're probably not gonna perform that well. So you need to, you know, do a little bit of time investment to get decent on him. But yeah, he's amongst the highest win rates. Stats don't lie. He's a tank, right? He's a very good kit. He skills pretty well. No split push potential, but good stat check, good scaling, good... yeah, I mean, he's just an annoying champion to deal with. He's in a very simplistic kit, in a way. So yeah, I think he's solid here. Sion. Well, he's a tank. Probably top B tier. Because tanks, all of them kind of have gotten buffed. But the problem with Sion is that compared to other tanks, it's way harder to get a successful laning phase. And there's a lot more champions that just straight up counter you and make it hard to play, whilst not having the best scaling, right? We all know you can play AD Sion, but I'm talking about tank Sion, like the normal Sion kind of. And very often you're gonna lose priority in the early game. You can't really play as aggressive as like an Ornn, or a Cho'Gath, or a Poppy could, or a Shen could, right? So you're gonna get pushed in. You know what? Let me check his win rate. He could actually be even worse than I'm saying. Okay, wait, he's actually higher win rate than I anticipated. Usually this champion is way lower win rate. So he's actually like amongst 50%. I think this is just a solid placing for him. Yeah, tank items getting buffed. That probably made him a bit stronger. I think notoriously he's always been bottom of the win rates, but tank items being buffed, other items being nerfed. Or not tank items being buffed. Let's just say tank items not getting nerfed as hard, right? Probably puts him in this position. Not many more thoughts on Sion. I don't think you play Skarner top at all anymore. He just belongs to the jungle. I know there's some Swain top connoisseurs. I don't know enough about Swain top. Decent sustain. Okay stat check, bad at split pushing, teamfight oriented champion. Swain is a champion that I just like, I forget he exists sometimes. Do you play him mid? Do you play him support? Do you play him top? I have no idea. I actually have no idea, man. I rarely see Swain. Damn, yeah, I don't know what to say about Swain, man. That's it. That's all I got. That's all I got. Tahm Kench. Now, this champion, I think, has always been a good lower MMR champion in the sense that his skill is very simplistic. He is a stat check monster. Insane amount of sustain through his Qs. A lot of damage. Now, the big drawback from Tahm Kench is his lack of wave clear. That is his biggest drawback. That's also why I don't like Shen. People don't really know how to abuse the fact that you have less wave clear on both Shen and Tahm Kench, and you're just being able to completely neutralize lane against them and kind of going fine, right? You can really abuse people when you're playing Tahm Kench. Again, his kit is very simplistic. Downsides, no wave clear, not the best split pushing. You can't really farm jungle camps, but Tahm Kench actually scales pretty good with items as well, especially if you go a mix of, let's say, Heartsteel, and then going for some AP options as well. You can go like your Riftmaker, even Liandry's I've seen, I believe. I've even seen Warmok's Tahm Kench. Like, this champion skills extremely well. He has good scaling, and the Heartsteel as well. Honestly, maybe a champion. There is a lot of champions that I should probably try out, right? Now, I believe I saw him last time we looked for, what's his name? We looked for Shen. Yeah, I saw Tahm Kench just below. Like, he's performing very well too. Yeah. That's Tahm Kench. Tryndamere is getting a massive buff. I believe he's amongst the lowest women's champions right now. Tryndamere has very good scaling. Oh, actually, he has okay scaling right now. He has good stat check, good sustain, good split push, but he's just a champion, I believe. I don't know. He kind of has everything you want in a champion. Good sustain, pretty simplistic kit, good stat check, because you can just E into most players level 1 and just kill them. Yeah, Tryndamere is actually surprising for me, because look, I saw this coming by earlier. Look, he is a very low win rate, almost as low as Riven, which just catches me off guard completely. I have a lot of people that are asking me to play a game of Tryndamere on stream, or a few games, and now that I see the stats, I can kind of, like, I'm also more motivated to do so, because, again, amazing stat check, like, infinite sustain, good split push, scaling, honestly, as well with items. I'm just surprised to see him this low win rate. I don't know why he's this low win rate. I think his items and or his kit is just probably too weak right now. With his kit already not giving him, like, similar to Riven, I guess Tryndamere gets everything from his items, right? And with all items getting nerfed, that's probably that made Tryndamere just that much weaker too. And they're buffing his kits. I think they're giving him more attack speed and more armor. They're buffing his attack speed and his armor, I believe, or something else. So I guess they're giving him a stronger kit so that he has more opportunities to be more impressive in laning phase. This is one of the champions that definitely catches me off guard, similar with Ornn, I believe it was. I think they caught me off guard as well. So he kind of has all the 4 asses, but he's ass. Teemo. When I'm gonna do the range top climb, this is definitely a champion I'm gonna be playing quite a lot. Now, honestly, I don't know how Teemo's performing right now. Apparently, he's on par with Tryndamere in terms of win rate. I think a few things that probably hit Teemo is fleet nerf, absorb life nerf. I don't know itemization, but I think this champion got hit by fleet nerf, tier 2 boots nerf like Tabis and boots of swiftness. So with boots getting nerfed, his runes getting nerfed, and then now his items getting nerfed, I think just all around he got weaker by changes that happened to the game that were meant to happen. Because honestly, in the past, I've played Teemo myself. I went boots of swiftness with fleet footwork, and I was having infinite sustain and dealing a lot of damage and always spacing out of them. I remember people calling me racist for playing Teemo. That's actually a YouTube video where I did just that. And I think with all of that getting weaker, Teemo got weaker too. But I'm going to be playing him. So that's my thoughts on Teemo. Trundle? Lethal Tempo is back. I haven't checked that at all yet, but I would expect Trundle to be doing pretty good then, right? Yep. And that is completely correct. He is 8 tier right now. For some of these champions, I just have to check because I don't play that much in a lower MMR right now. And I haven't seen much Trundle myself, but now that I think about it, Lethal Tempo being back, simplistic kit, he has a good split push, insane split push. He has good stat check amongst the strongest early game top lane champions, good sustain through his W as well, and his skills alright, so he has all that. Basically everything Tryndamere has, but I guess Trundle just has a better kit. I think Tryndamere and Trundle come into the exact same tier, but I guess one thing that Trundle excels at compared to Tryndamere, for example, is that he has his ultimate that lowers all the stats from all these tanks maybe, right? And Tryndamere doesn't have that. I guess why Tryndamere is also so low win rate is because every tank is good. And guess what counts as Tryndamere? Tanks. Like, you can't really kill tanks as Tryndamere. That's probably why he's also so low. I usually look at Malphite, or Tahm Kench, Singed, Nasus, Cho'Gath, Hoppy. What's Tryndamere gonna do? Trundle, he can still kill tanks, so that's probably why, even though their kits are very simplistic or similar, he does well. I'm gonna put him here. I think Trundle is actually very good. With the tempo being buffed, he has all 4 asses, and he's not ass. I believe this champion is getting a pretty giant nerf. I think Udyr is a pretty strong champion, but he's also like, I'm gonna put him top at B. So the reason I put him top at B, or maybe low A, I'll put him low A. So Udyr actually, as a champion, is pretty hard to play, as weird as it sounds. His kit is both simplistic and hard to play, because you can play Udyr at the baseline and be fine, but if you really want to make or get the maximum out of Udyr, you need to know the order of your abilities, right? And really find the limits like that. Now, the thing is, he's extremely good stat check. There's very few champions that can beat an Udyr level 1. He is okay, like he's really good sustain as well, sorry, with his E. Pretty terrible scaling though, and therefore also not the best split pushing. But see, the thing is, I remember Udyr top being meta in professional play, and it amongst the lowest win rates because people just played Udyr casually. You're asking a top laner that play Aatrox, Camille, stuff like this to pick up at Udyr. That's what I mean with this champion actually being pretty hard to learn to master, right? He had the lowest win rate out of most top players, even though he was theoretically one of the most broken ones because people didn't know how to play him, how to pilot him correctly enough. I don't know how to pilot him Udyr. The champion is both very strong, but at the same time, he's also pretty, you know, he requires some games. I would put him in the same bracket as Rengar, where he's a good niche top lane champion. Those are my thoughts. I don't think you're going to see this champion a lot, but if you know Udyr's kit well and learn how to abuse it, I think you're going to catch a lot of people off guard with it, similar to Rengar. Urgot. I think Urgot probably benefited from all these changes that happened, but at the same time, I'm not too sure. I would put Urgot in high S tier. That is because, probably similar with Trundle, he has percentage health damage in his passive, which is good against all these tanks. I think Hullbreaker is probably very good on him. Most of his items, like Stridebreaker, I guess, got nerfed, right? Cleaver got nerfed, so some of his core items have gotten nerfed. But he got Hullbreaker in return. I'm just gonna check his win rate. Let's just see. Where is he at? Okay, he is okay. Actually, he is very high. Yeah. I mean, I expected him to be high, and that is also because his kit is good. He gets percentage health damage from his kit. Any champion that gets those with all the items are going to be doing better. He's always been good against tanks. He's good scaling. He's okay at split pushing. He's just very easy to get caught off guard, but amazing stat check, good scaling, terrible sustain, kind of. Actually, no, that's not true. If you go Cole, you know your W, like Cole gives you healing every time you hit a minion, and with your W, every hit counts as a healing thing, actually. So he's okay sustain, okay scaling, good stat check, and okay split push. Yeah, I think he's just very solid and good against killing tanks. And Varus, Vayne. I'm gonna put them in a tier list. Well, Varus is probably pretty good. Vayne, I actually wouldn't know. Okay, they don't have Varus in this tier list, but that's okay. I would put Varus probably in, I don't know. I'm gonna play range tops. The thing is, my thoughts on Varus right now is this champion can beat everything in lane, one of the best blind picks, but I don't know what his itemizations are right now, because honestly, last split, they were randomly rushing lock. So for me, I'm setting Varus pretty low. I think putting him in A is just safe. Vayne, however, I would put significantly higher because Vayne has percentage health. Wait a second. Look at this. I just checked because I'm unsure about range. She is as low as Riven in terms of win rate. She's also picked very little. Okay, so I guess when you're playing in a lower MMR, people don't know how to utilize Vayne because in high elo, this champion is S+ tier probably, or S tier. But I guess in a lot of MMR, she's just bad because people don't really know how to space well enough with her. And the same reasoning we said with Akshan or with Jayce. You die once, it's going to be very hard to have impact in the game. You're very easy to keep getting caught off guard. Yeah, you have true damage in your W, and you go Blade Rune King very often. But I believe people are even going like Blade Rune King Stridebreaker now. So you both have percentage health damage in your item. You're going to be pretty tanky, and then you have true damage in your kit as well. The champion should realistically be strong, but I guess it's not played that much right now. Vladimir? Vladimir! Yeah, this surprises me as well. He's actually bottom of the line in terms of win rate. I don't know if his items are pretty bad right now, or he doesn't really have an identity with items. WMAX Vladimir was one of the most disgusting things I played towards the end of the last split. Yeah, he's bottom of the line in win rate. I don't think he's as bad as the win rate suggests, so I would actually put him like probably somewhere around here. His kit is relatively simplistic. He has pretty bad stat check unless you go Airy, Precision, Flash Ignite, because then you can really solo kill people quite easily. So I would probably play Q-Max right now because the W has been nerfed. So I'd go Q-Max, Flash Ignite, Aggressive Vladimir. You have okay stat check if you go that setup. You have Scorch, Airy, you do a shit ton of damage. You get Ability Haste with full scaling setup, right, still. So you have Infinite Sustain. You have pretty good scaling, not the best split pushing. I just don't know why he's performing that bad. I guess he's just getting stat check too hard in lane. Maybe people are still playing W max even though they shouldn't. I don't know why he's performing so bad right now, but yeah, his win rate is amongst the lowest on par with K'Sante and Rumble. But I don't think his kit is as weak as these. Like, you have a lot more options, you scale very well. I think I'm gonna put him here, and I think he's solid there. Volibear. Yesterday, I still have PTSD from a Volibear I played against yesterday, by the way. I think Volibear is very solid for lower Mars. Multiple reasons. Extremely good, simplistic kit to play with. Very stat check heavy, very good sustain, good split push opportunities. But mainly his early game laning strength and his ability to be very diverse in builds, I guess. You can go kind of go tanky, you can go the AP version, you can go, right? So you can go a more tank-oriented Volibear, you can go for Rot of Ages Navori setup, you can go for full AP with like Nasus Tooth even. I don't know, this champion has so many options, so he's very versatile. You destroy tanks, and with so many tanks being in meta, I think that just also increases Volibear, right, in terms of his strength. Very good stat check, decent scaling. Check his winner. I think I saw him towards the top earlier because oh wow, he's even higher than anticipated. He's S+ in terms of win rate. Well, still being played quite a lot, so that's impressive. I think maybe my Camille ranking for lower MR is just too high. Like, I'm such a big Camille fan right now, but maybe because of her, let's say, how hard her kit is, right? It's harder to pull off Camille than it is to pull off a Shen or a Volibear. So maybe I'm just gonna put it here. I think this is a safe position because we have to be a little bit more inclusive, right? I think if this is an Emerald tier list, then I would put Camille here. But since we're going from Iron to Emerald, I think this is a better accurate description of how strong Camille is right now. Warwickus, kind of the same as Volibear. Super good, cheesy champion. Kind of the same as Strondo as well. I think you can go Lethal Tempo on Warwick again. So Warwick has Lethal Tempo again. You have the Blade Rune King. Your kit allows you to deal with a lot of tanks. You get good 1v1 pressure, right? So, upsides. He is very good with 1v1s, stat check, heavy, infinite sustain, right? It's very, very hard to approach a Warwick in lane. Yeah, he beats tanks, he beats melees, he struggles a little bit more in range, but you have enough sustain to deal through that. A lot of kill pressure. Downside of Warwick is that very often you go Blade Rune King, Warwick, right? And so that means you only have single target damage, you don't have any AoE damage, and you lack in wave clear. So what you have to do as Warwick is kind of get ahead and then, you know, snowball correctly from that, but don't start falling behind because then you're really gonna struggle. So you're extremely good early game and mid game, but you also have to learn to kind of itemize correctly to still be okay in the late game and not be completely useless. But probably Strikebreaker and or Titanic make up for that. I just think he's a good champion. Where I put him, I believe is fair. Maybe I think Volibear is probably a little bit better. Yuricus is one of my favorite champions, as you guys know, and he's actually S tier. Now, I don't know what build you go. Probably Trinity Force, maybe more lethality oriented after with like a Soreljas. I'm not exactly sure. I'll probably try Yorick out a few times myself because he is S+ tier in the lower MMRs. Definitely if you go from Iron up until, let's say, Platinum, he's S+ tier. Maybe after that he starts getting a little bit weaker. The thing is, people don't know how to play against Yorick. That is genuinely like a hidden passive from Yorick. He's like two passives. His normal passive with the Goose, and then his hidden passive is people don't know how to play against him. This champion is actually very conditional. And this is why it doesn't work that well in higher elos. And that is because, first of all, he needs to get multiple Graves to get the Goose to spawn, and then he needs to land an E in order for them to be useful. However, so what I wanted to get towards is that he's super weak in the early game, but after level 6, he gets his Maiden, right? And it gets harder to deal with, but even then, it's not that easy to control Yorick. It took me a few games to figure out as well. But the downside is that if this champion starts rolling, and you don't beat him in lane, right? Or you don't destroy him in the early game, he skills extremely well with items. He's super obnoxious. One of the best split pushers in the game. Yeah, sustain after level 6, insane. Stat check after level 6, insane. Before that, very weak. That's also the biggest weakness to Yorick, is his early game. So, if you're able to be a Yorick, like beat the Yorick in the early game, you're gonna have a much better time. If you are a Yorick player and you survive your early game, you're gonna be in a good time, right? So, I mean, those go hand in hand. Obviously, I'm a big Yorick Yorick player myself. I absolutely love him. In my opinion, he's one of the, like, most diverse kits in the game, and he's super fun to play. Definitely give it a spin if you've never tried it. Try to watch some of my older Yorick videos to get some inspiration. One of the few champions in the game that can do passive income strategies. I love Yorick. He's S+ tier. He's always been good in lower MMRs. There's Yorikus. Yonyaso, where are the Wind Brothers ranked actually in terms of win rate? Probably not doing too well. No, I'm gonna put both of them at the bottom of B tier. In higher elo, I think these champions are very strong right now. The main build you see both of them go is either Blade Rune King into Shield Bow or Blade Rune King into Strikebreaker. However, both of the champions, I believe, are getting buffed in terms of their crit scaling on their Qs, I believe. or Yasuo something with his ultimate as well. But basically, they're both getting buffed. I think they're actually already in a completely fine spot, right? Lethal Tempo has been returned for both of them, which makes them more impressive to lane against. They don't have to go Grasp anymore. Yeah, they still go Blade Rune King, but maybe they're gonna go for a more... I think they're still actually gonna rush Blade Rune King and then go for either Shield Bow or Strike Breaker, but let's see. Right now, in terms of win rate, they're both very low. High elo, they're definitely performing better. Those are my thoughts. They kind of go in the same basket. Wukong top, a champion I still have to try. I don't know how much this champion is being played in general for him to be considered. I would put him either B or A tier. I just checked up his win rate. He is just below Fiora, but Fiora for me is in a higher note. A lot of people have asked me to play a game of Wukong. So the problem that I have with Wukong is that I believe there's just bruiser champions that does everything that he does, but better. But a few things that he does have is that he has insane stat check potential against AD heavy topsides because of his passive giving him so much armor. So if you play against an AD heavy topside, Wukong is very good. The thing is, you kind of really rely on, like, you're kind of like a Pantheon Olaf type beat. So I'm going to put him in low A tier. I think you're kind of similar to Olaf Pantheon, where you're super strong in the early game and you want to snowball from that. But if you don't really get ahead, yeah, you're just a Wukong. Important to mention though, it's like really hard to play Wukong against AP champions like a Kennen, Gragas, anything AP oriented, because of your lack of magic resist options and your passive only being good for physical damage, right? So like 80 damage. I don't know enough about Wukong. A lot of people have asked me to try him. There's a lot of champions that I've been saying that I want to try, right? I want to try a game of, I for sure have to try some Wukong, some Yorick, some Shen again, maybe some Singe, maybe some Tahm Kench. Zac-Top, well, he's a tank. Most tank items haven't gotten nerfed. I'm actually curious, is Zac-Top top of the win rate? Probably is, right? I mean, Zac-Top, okay, yeah, in terms of win rate, he's not played that much, but in terms of win rate, he's 4th. I'm gonna put him solid here. Zac-Top has been good for, I think, 1.5 years. Like, he's even played sometimes in pro play, mainly by Broken Blade, I think. There was this Korean Zac one-trick that was, like, super high elo. I think, like, top 30 even in Korea, being a Zac-Top one-trick. Zac is also one of those tanks that you are able to play aggressive with. Tanks item not being nerfed. Tanks are being good right now. He's infinite sustain. He's good stat check. Okay scaling. Not good at split pushing, but it's like every tank kind of falls in the same bracket as like Cho'Gath for me. Perhaps a champion I should give it a spin as well. And then I believe we've had everything. I've been yapping for a solid 1.5 hours now about every top lane champion. But I don't think, I'm going to quickly sift through. I don't think I've missed a top laner. I won't consider Sejuani a top laner. I think we've gotten everything. And I'm pretty satisfied with my list. So this would be the tier list again from around Iron up until Emerald. I've explained my thoughts on every champion in depth and what I think about them, what their strengths and weaknesses are. So I hope it also helps you to finding your main champion. And now let's move on to the higher elo tier list. Now that I've gone individually over pretty much every champion in the lower MMR, talked about their benefits, talked about their downsides, I'm going to the higher MMR tier list. Before I go there though, I forgot about Aurora in the lower tier list. I'll put her around A tier. She's an obnoxious champion to deal with in the top lane, one of the better range top champions that exist. A lot of sustain, a lot of stat check potential, not the best split pushing, but pretty good scaling too. So I'll put Aurora around there. Now for the higher elo tier list right here, I've already put everything into the position where I believe they belong. I think one thing we're seeing in common is that tanks are pretty good, and then we have some range top laners and some melee bruisers that are the best. So the best range tops right now are Kennen and Aurora. To no surprise, I think both of these are AP top lane champions. They're both very good, very obnoxious, good blind pickable, very versatile, and I believe AD junglers are just the strongest right now. And so when AD junglers are good, you see these AP range tops that are pretty good as well. Paired with that, Ryze is pretty high on my list too. For tanks, Shen, in my opinion, is the best S+ tier. I wonder if we're gonna see him be played more in, I guess, the next split in competitive as well. And then I have Gwen and Camille. Gwen has percentage health damage in her passive and true damage, and Camille has true damage. Can make great use of shield bash, like I explained. So these are the best. Now Jax in the higher MMR tends to just do better. He's also good against both Gwen and Camille. Against Shen and Kennen, I don't think he does that well, but it's still playable. I think Jax is just one of those all-around top laners. Poppy Zac, I talked pretty extensively about. They're both just absolutely disgustingly good in lane. They are tanks, but they can play pretty much into everything, right? They can play into other tanks, they can play into melee bruisers and neutralize them, and they skill amazingly well. And then we talked about Fiora, and then Fiora is pretty much a tank destroyer out of that list. Fiora also does well against Camille, can do okay against Gwen. And then there's my personal favorite, which is Mundo. Now, Mundo can be S++++ tier if enemy team has no percentage health damage. However, the big downside of Mundo is that you can blind pick him, and a big trait of most of these champions in the S+ and the S tier list is that they're okay in terms of blind pick. It's a very important trait to have, right? Because 50% of the games you're gonna be on blue side, 50% of the games you're gonna be on red side. If you're red side Mundo, last pick, and they don't have anything with percentage health damage, and Mundo is S+++ tier, right? But you kind of need a draft condition, whereas you don't necessarily need those conditions when you're picking a Jax or a Zac, for example. I think the rest of the tier list is pretty self-explanatory. I don't think anything that shines out too much. What I do notice is that most of these like melee bruiser heavy champions like the Wukong, the Pantheon, the Renekton, and the Urgot, they all kind of fall in the same badge for me here, right? I think one big shout out is that Illaoi and Yorick just do way worse the higher elo you go. And Tryndamere is apparently shit everywhere. This champion is very, very bad right now. Champions that transfer well, even in the higher MMRs, for example, is the Warwick. Nasus still does pretty well. Volibear still does pretty well, and Garen is also performing statistically very poorly. I've played some Garen games myself, so in terms of win rate he's here, but myself, I'm actually going to put him in A tier, because I still believe he can do somewhat fine. But almost every meta champion also kind of just beats Garen, right? I think all 4 of these champions kind of have a good way to answer Garen, and most of these are fine to Garen as well. And because the meta is so good against Garen, he kind of falls off too. Riven does a little bit better towards the high MMR, and one that does pretty well that was surprising to me is Mordekaiser. See, normally I would put Mordekaiser on par rather with like the Yorick and the Illaoi, but right now he's actually pretty good. His win rate is pretty good, and that to me kind of completes the list. The high elo meta is always going to be different to the lower elo meta, but as you guys can see, some champions transfer. I think this is also going to expand more because the items have changes. The item changes have just gotten in there, right? But this is my overview and my thoughts of all champions in top lane right now. So I hope you took away at least something new from today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm wishing you all an amazing remainder of your day. And thank you for your support as always.